Homesteading Barbie here. Today we are going to be making one of my favorite recipes. It's homemade bread. It's so fluffy and it comes out of the oven just warm and delicious. And on a cold winter's day like it is here on the homestead, it's really a treat. You want your water to be about 100 degrees. 95 or 105 would be okay. If you have a digital thermometer, these are really handy for a lot of different things. So that's just perfect. I'm going to put that in there. That's a cup of water. I'm going to put the recipe in the description if you're more of a visual person. And then I have instant yeast. I'm just going to sprinkle on there. And I'm going to put the sugar in. It's a tablespoon of sugar to give the yeast something to eat. And I'm just going to let that sit for about 5 minutes and explain some things. So when I first made bread, and we're going to stir that up. Get everything nice and stirred, and that's going to bloom really nicely. So we'll let that sit for just a minute. So the first time I made bread, it came out so hard, just like a doorstop or something. It was terrible. So what I quickly realized was that if you want nice fluffy bread, the first thing you need to do is use white flour. Unfortunately, whole wheat just will never get that uber fluffy wonderfulness that we all love to eat with soup and other things. It's just not going to do it. And the other thing is that you need commercial yeast. Now you can use yeast that you make yourself. That's completely fine, but it's just not going to get that uber fluffy amazingness. It's going to be a nice loaf of bread, but it's just not going to. If you are using homemade yeast, you're going to want to use a half a cup of that in this mixture, and we're going to let it sit. It's just kind of going to bloom and do its thing. I'm going to let it sit for a few more minutes. We're going to come back and I'll show you the next step. This is what it's going to look like at this phase. Okay, so it's been a few minutes. At this point, we are going to add half of the flour. So I'm going to add 3 cups. And you can use your mixer at this point, or you can just stir it by hand if you don't have a mixer or if you don't want to mess with it, because there's so much water to flour, it mixes really, really easily. Oh, and we're going to add the rest of the water as well. So we're going to add another 1.5 cups of water. If you add warm water, that's a great idea. Just make sure it's not over 100 degrees. Or it'll affect your yeast. So this is 98, so that's perfect. So we're going to add the rest of the water and half of the flour. And then we're just going to stir it up. This is the consistency that we're looking for. And it is super important to let it rest at this point. That's how you're going to get it extra fluffy. So we're going to let it sit for a half hour and then we're going to come back. Okay, so we're back and this is what it looks like. If it's doubled in size and it has these nice air bubbles, then we are ready to add the rest of the flour. So we're going to do another 3 cups. And we're going to do 2 teaspoons of salt. You can use any salt that you want. Sea salt, pink salt, whatever makes you happy. And then we're going to add 1/4 cup of some sort of fat. So butter, oil. I'm going to use homemade tallow. which is a really wonderful thing to do with your homemade tallow. It gives it a really nice, rich, deep flavor. I wouldn't suggest it if you're using it for something that you want to make sweet. So if you're doing like monkey bread or something like that, I wouldn't suggest it. But anything that you're going to eat with meat or even garlicky, it tastes fantastic. And I'm going to put that into a little saucepan and put it on the stove for just a minute to get it nice and warm. Okay, while that's heating up, I'm going to go ahead and start mixing my ingredients. If you do not have a mixer, no big deal at all. You can do this all by hand. Because I have a mixer, I'm going to go ahead and use it. You want to start off nice and slow and get periodically faster. Otherwise, your ingredients are all going to come out on you all over the place. Okay, so the lard is nice and hot. I'm going to go ahead and pour it on in, and that will mix in a lot easier. Okay, the mixer's gotten it started, and it's having a little bit of a hard time because it's so thick, but that's what we want. That's okay. We're just going to give it a little bit of elbow grease. Make sure everything's all mixed in. Make sure your hands are washed. I'm just going to make sure that everything's all mixed. Okay, that's perfect. Now at this point, you can go ahead and start kneading it, or I'm going to use the attachment on my mixer. And we're going to knead it for about 5 minutes. Okay, you definitely do not want to over knead it. If anything, with the dough hook, it's a little better to under knead it, because you can always come back and knead it by hand. At this point, it shouldn't be sticky at all. And it should be really workable. And as soon as it's done, you're going to be able to feel it in the dough. It's going to kind of go, huh. Let me see how else I can explain that. It's just kind of going to like firm up a little bit. Okay, that's about perfect for that. And when you see that it's not really leaving lines anymore, everything's nice and smooth, and it kind of feels like firm when you push into it, that's when it's ready. So we're going to put it in the bowl, and we're going to wet our towel, and we're going to put it on there, and we're going to let it sit for an hour to an hour and a half. Okay, the dough has doubled in size, so we are ready for the next step. So I took my pans and I put some olive oil spray all around, nice thick coat. You can use tallow or butter with a paper towel if you prefer. That's what I did. So I am going to just super gently get this out. Whoop. I'm just going to kind of tap it. And then I'm going to split it in two. And I'm going to form it into a nice little loaf. Just kind of tap it into a nice little loaf. I want to leave a lot of the air. I don't want there to be air pockets, so that's why I'm tapping. But I do want it to be nice and fluffy. So we're just going to form it into a nice little loaf. Okay, that's a good size, and I'm just going to plunk that in there. And then we do the next one the same way. And plunk that in there. Now I'm going to put the damp towel back over it, and I'm going to let it rise for another hour. So I'll see you in another hour. Okay, it's been about an hour and 20 minutes. An hour to an hour and a half is perfectly fine, depending on how warm and how humid it is in your house. So I'm going to, there's lots of different washes that you can do. And at this point, it's pretty much doubled in size. And I think it's going to be just perfect how it is. So you can do egg wash, you can do butter, you can do tallow, lard, water even. So what the idea is you want to create elasticity when it's rising. So it's about to rise even more than this. So it's going to rise even more than this, and it's going to puff up on the top. So what I want to do is create a little bit of elasticity. And I don't want to touch it at this point. I want it to be as fluffy as it possibly can. So I'm just going to give it that amount, and it'll go all over. Now you can score it, but I think it's fine either way. It's kind of chef's choice. So I'm going to pop it in the oven. It's already preheated at 375 for a half hour, and I'll come back and we'll see how it turns out. Okay, we are finished. Just the fun parts left. So they came out absolutely gorgeous, super wonderful, golden brown. This is exactly what you want to see. We're going to take our bread knife. So these come out really, really easily if you oiled the pan properly. And look at how beautiful. These came out so gorgeous. Absolutely lovely. So I didn't have any butter, but what I do have is some canned butter. I really like it. It kind of tastes like ghee. And then when they have a sale on butter, I buy way too much butter and I can a bunch of it. And then when I make bread and I realize that I don't have any butter, I have some in the pantry. It's really pretty cool. So let's try this. This is where all the hard work pays off. Mmm. Mmm. It's warm and scrumptious. It would go great with soup. Or just by itself. I don't think you can do better than bread and butter. This is a winning combo. Mmm. Well, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you make this bread, and I hope you enjoy it. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Have a wonderful day.